Hello, hello. I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write, where I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors. On this, the eve of Halloween, I am giving my tips to writing the things that go bump in the night, and the creatures from our nightmare, which make us stay up with the light on just so we don't have to experience them in our dreams. Without further ado, these are my 5 tips to writing monsters. Number 1, decide what type of monster you want to write. Are they tragic and misunderstood? Are they an unfathomable and unstoppable power hellbent on slaughtering our heroes? Are they attractive? I won't judge, but that is not a genre I plan to ever consume or write. More power to you if you do, though. Each of the answers to those questions leads to vastly different stories and outcomes, many of which might be not safe for work due to graphic gore or spicy relations. In general, and like any good antagonist, we want to create a monster that is just hard enough where there is only a slim chance for the heroes to survive, or escape, or possibly defeat it, but more likely, delay its return. Number 2, mysterious. Don't fill in all the gaps. A monster is scarier if they can appear at any time and capture their victims. If we have pages of rules and can predict when a monster will attack, then it becomes less scary and more formulaic, or an equation we and the characters need to solve. To turn this on its head, if the characters are starting to figure out how the monster works at the cost of their friends' lives, that will add in a lot of suspense. If each person the monster takes teaches them something new about how it works and what it goes after, well, I mean, that is absolutely suspenseful, and we are scared for those characters. Or they could think they understand what the monster is doing and how it's choosing its victims, only to realize everything they know is wrong. Number 3, tap into real fears. Arachnophobia, claustrophobia, acrophobia. Only one of those is based around an actual creature, the rest are more scenarios. So use the monster to put the characters, and thus our readers, into scenarios that will terrify them. We can create a toxic sludge monster that goes around burying greedy businessmen alive within coffins. That will capture that moment of claustrophobia within a lot of our readers. And maybe it goes around putting them in coffins as an act of revenge for how they dumped pollution in the local environment and created the monster to begin with. Or we can show our character hiding in the closet with their hands over their mouth to muffle the sound of their breaths as they are trying to escape the monster. They are straining over to look through a slit in the door and see whether or not the coast is clear. Only the monster is in the closet with them. Or it covers up the slit and looks directly in their eyes to terrify the characters and the audience. Those moments universally horrify our readers, as we can imagine ourselves in those scenarios, paralyzed by our mortality. Number 4, don't make the monster right. Going back to my earlier points about deciding what type of monster to create and the mysteries surrounding them, a monster is a lot less scary when they are fundamentally correct. If the monster is targeting those who wronged them and ethically evil people, then I know most likely I'd be okay in those scenarios. And it's hard to sympathize with the greedy businessmen when the sludge monster is right. That distance makes me root for the monster and removes any sense of fear I might have felt. Let's say you want to write a sympathetic monster. In doing so, they become more human and flawed. And there's absolutely a place for that, but the story is less spooky and horrific and terrifying, and more tragic as we recognize that the creature or being or monster or whatever is simply misunderstood. And lastly, number 5, logic. Like magic, our monsters don't need to make absolute sense. However, they need to make a reasonable amount of sense within the worlds we've created. As writers, we need to establish the strengths, the weaknesses, and dietary needs. Break down the monster or monsters into the hows and whys. Over the course of the story, readers may never discover all those details we've created. And yet there should never be a point within that story where readers say, that doesn't make sense. Hypothetically, just to pick a completely random example, let's say we have a giant bear monster who is tormenting a group of teenagers with superpowers. Again, just to pick a completely random possible detail. Well, over the course of that hypothetical story, I have the monster demonstrate superpowers that the heroes also demonstrate. So there's no magic Deus Ex Machina that just appears out of nowhere where they suddenly can get out of trouble using powers they've never displayed before. In fact, I use the monster as a slight foreshadowing for what the main characters might eventually be able to do. My point is I grounded my story in a mostly realistic world, and I took a lot of time to consider the physics of impossible scenarios and make them make sense. So when magic and superpowers and telekinesis and time travel and everything is thrown together, I still want it to logically and consistently work. For all the logic and reason, true monsters should be well beyond our control and likely comprehension. And to close out tonight, I have 2 dishonorable mentions. Number 1, don't add anatomical features which don't belong. I am tired of reading and watching shows that have bug-based aliens and monsters with certain generally female descriptions. Or put another way, the Zora monsters from the Zelda series are guilty of this. Despite evolving from fish, they have certain reproductive organs which are more commonly found in mammals. And that just makes me think the writers and game designers were pervs. My second dishonorable mention is making human incompetence and general klutziness a bigger threat than the monsters themselves. If a monster is lurching towards its victim and the only way they get caught is because they trip, that is a bad trope. An average person should easily be able to escape from some slow-moving monster. Now that goes out the window when there's a swarm or fast zombies. Again, it's all about creating the scenarios to match what the monster is capable of. To accommodate, we can put our slow-moving monster in a narrow hallway where the victim's speed amounts to nothing and they are still trapped. Those are my 5 tips to writing monsters and 2 dishonorable mentions. I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write. I post my running and writing progress on Instagram and X as Running to Write, so be sure to follow me and join in with your own thoughts. Be sure to sign up for my monthly newsletter for regular updates on my sort of musings, pitfalls, and lessons learned. The link is in the description below. See you next time. Until then, bring life to the things which go bump in the night.